Hello, everybody. Okay. Hey, I'm back. Hope everybody is having a wonderful Friday. Weekend is here, and Cab Franc Day is here this weekend. Sunday is the official day of Cab Franc Day, December 4th. And tonight, there is still time. If you go to my profile for the round table tonight, and the round table is a virtual round table where I have 10 winemakers, and we are going to be talking about Cab Franc. But those tickets are free, so you can register now, and it starts at 4 p.m. Pacific time. But before we even get to that, I'm so excited for today. We are talking with Brecon Estate. And Brecon Estate is a boutique estate winery nestled in the rolling West Side Hills outside of Paso Robles with an international award-winning winemaker. And they produce amazing wines. I mean, we have been fans of Brecon since, I think, literally before they officially opened. We were there and they were in like kind of a soft opening type thing. And absolutely, to talk to Brecon, I'm going to invite them in right now. And we are going to be talking with who is the assistant winemaker under Damien. So let's see. Oh, I see.
Oh,
There we go. I had the camera angle facing the wrong way.
that's right. Surprise, surprise. You got to see what's on the other end of the camera.
Yes, there we go. So how are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
I am good. I am good. It is Friday before Cab Franc Day. So things are kind of hectic, but I'm pretty excited. We're gonna celebrate hard this weekend.
Absolutely.
So at Brecon, everything is done in small batch wines, and as it's written on the site, every individual lot tells a story, and everything is just through the tasting room, right? You guys have no true distribution.
100% through the tasting room. Absolutely. It's kind of fun to showcase our wines in one spot where people can come and get the full Brecon experience.
And it is an experience. I remember when we discovered Brecon the first time. It is such a beautiful venue. It is so, I mean, the views are amazing, and the indoor space is beautiful, but that whole outdoor space where you can chill, and of course they're dog friendly. And Vanessa here, she loves Brecon. Yeah, Vanessa is a wise person.
Absolutely. No, the outside area is fantastic. You're absolutely right. West side of Paso is a special place, and our facility is world class, I think. So.
I wouldn't say no to that. It's spectacular. And it's won, not only do your wines win amazing awards, but the architecture of the building oh, hi, Amanda. The architecture of the building actually has won awards too. So it is just award winning across the board.
Absolutely. So Amanda and Damien purchased the property with their business partner, Simon, and his wife, Anna, about 10 years ago. We have just celebrated our 10-year anniversary, which is a really cool experience. And they purchased the property from Norman Vineyards. So those who've been around Paso for a while probably saw what it was before. And you're absolutely right. The architecture group, the landscape architecture group that they worked with to modernize the tasting room and the space are amazing, because what it's turned out to be is super unique, a great place to make wine, a great place to taste wine, and it's a cool vibe. I mean, you get a little bit of a modern twist on architecture, but I think Damien and Amanda's true personality came out in what they try to achieve. So it's really fun.
It is. It's a wonderful place. And I'm not, I'm going to go out on the limb and say I have a pretty darn good Cab Franc palate. I'm gonna say I have a good Cab Franc palate. And Brecon Cab Franc is, we love it. We love it. In fact, and I'm going to say it again. So, Damien, if you're listening, and now we've got a connection here, Anthony here. We're always looking for Cab Franc. One of these days, we're gonna break you down, and you're gonna sell us, a little bit of your Cab Franc vine, a little bit of Cab Franc fruit. I joke every year. I'm gonna ask. You can keep saying no, but I'm gonna keep asking.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. You're on the list of people because you're absolutely right. Cab Franc is a special grape. There's not much of it planted on in Paso, and we have some of the oldest vines of Cab Franc in Paso. And I think there's a few people in the same boat as you, wanting to purchase at least one, maybe even half a ton of grapes. But unfortunately, we just have enough for ourselves. Well, fortunately for us, unfortunately for everyone else, we have just enough for our own program. So on the estate, you might know this, but on the estate, we have about 6 acres of old vine Cab Franc. Those were left in ground from when Amanda and Damien purchased the property from Norman. And they're planted in the 70s. And like I said, as far as we know, it's the oldest planting of Cab Franc in Paso. A couple of years back in 2018, we planted about 4 acres of a new clone of Cab Franc, just to give us a different blending option, trial a new clone. It took Damien a little while to go through the selection process of what to plant, how to properly, train the vines. And so it was a good experiment for a couple of years. But last year and this year has been some amazing fruit off the new vines. So it's fun. Cab Franc is a unique grape, and I think Damien and our winemaking team make the best in Paso. I mean, we're being a little biased, but we're okay. It's ours. We can be biased.
Well, if you're following along on the chat here, Stemware Mandatory is agreeing with you. Great wines by Brecon. So you may be, it's not biased when it's true. Let me just say that, right?
Right.
You're just lucky that you can have it whenever you want.
Yeah. So I think one of the things to know about our Cab Franc is definitely the vineyard site that we get it from. Our vineyard is on Lina Colada soil. It has a lot of limestone, a lot of calcareous rocks in there. I think that lends to the wine style that we have. A little bit lighter on the palate in terms of heaviness, I guess. The structure is definitely there. There's plenty of structure, but the limestone soils really create a light a wine. Our 2020 hasn't been released yet, but our 2019 has won is well awarded, a 99-point award from the LA Wine Festival, which is fantastic. So I think the limestone soils really attribute to that. The old vine, definitely attributes to that. The blending of the two, new and old, attribute to that. So I think it's definitely a great site. And Dana and Amanda, I think, won the jackpot, if you will, on being able to buy that property and farm it. It's fantastic.
And now, when did you come to Brecon?
Yeah, so I came to Brecon 2 years ago. Damien and I have known each other for quite some time, and he was in need of a winemaker for the 2021 harvest, and I reached out to him. We've been friends for about 10 years. I reached out to him and offered my winemaking services, and been part of the team since. So it's been fun to reconnect with Damien, learn about the site and some of the unique vineyards that he's pulling fruit from, and then also integrate with the team and work with the tasting room staff and share the fruits of our labor, our Cab Franc.
And so how many cases does Brecon actually produce? And then how many cases of Cab Franc?
Yeah, so on a whole, Brecon is in the camp of 4,000 to 6,000 cases. I mean, it kind of depends year to year what the Mother Nature gives us and the crop load and things of that nature. And of that, our Cab Franc is about 200 cases. And that's strictly because of our vineyard. It's we only have about 10 acres of vines, of Cab Franc vines, and we farm it to the highest quality we can. And so what we yield from that are these 200 cases.
Sorry about that. My dog is hearing noises that are not occurring.
He's asking for some Cab Franc, I actually think.
Yeah. And so you actually mentioned it, but I was going to bring up that your reserve Cab Franc got 99 points in the Los Angeles International Wine and Spirits competition. And, seriously, kudos. And not at all surprising, but not at all surprising. But what is the difference between what your reserve Cab Franc is and then this label of Cab Franc?
So what you have in front of you actually is our reserve label Cab Franc.
Okay.
So, our reserve label Cab Franc is mainly made up of our old vine Cab Franc and a little bit of Cabernet Sauvignon. The rest of the Cab Franc that don't make it into the reserve program gets blended into a couple other wines. We have like Meritage and a couple other Bordeaux wines. But the best of the best in terms of fruit quality, aromatics, tannin structure, those get put into a reserve barrel program, which is about anywhere from 35 to 40% new Bordeaux oak, aged for 20 months before we put together our final blend. And that is our reserve Cab Franc. Great aromatics. I know I'm kind of jealous. You already poured yourself a glass.
Oh, yeah.
Get the program here. But really nice aromatics on the nose right away. I mean, you get the Cab Franc aromas, a little bit of red fruits, a little bit of tea leaf, maybe a little bit of what I call greens, but they're very nice for Cab Franc. It's totally varietally correct.
It is. It does have a bit of the green, which I'm guessing is coming more from the vintage, because in previous vintages, I haven't gotten that in it. But the thing is it's not in your face. What's coming to me first is that red fruit and a little bit of the like a sour cherry along with a little bit of cranberry. So some tart red fruit along with some sweeter, those raspberries or that sour cherry. And then absolutely that I call it black tea, but I don't drink tea. So it might not be black tea, but that's what in my head, that's what black tea comes across as.
I absolutely agree. I'm not a huge tea drinker myself, but I've had a few glasses of black tea, and that's what I would attribute it to as well. The 2020 growing year was actually a pretty decent growing year. There was a slight heat wave in the beginning of harvest. So Cab Franc is a late bud break, late ripening grape. Didn't affect the Cab Franc at all. We actually can get a pretty long hang time in the vineyard, which translates to full phenolic ripeness, more flavor, a really balanced wine. That also is what's nice about the limestone soils is even as the grape is ripening through maturity, natural acidity stays in the wine, making it really juicy and really a nice food pairing wine. The hard part with 2020, and it really wasn't that hard, I guess it's more of a bummer, is when you're farming on the coast, there's huge diurnal shifts, and sometimes you're subject to early frost and rain events, and that's kind of what happened in 2020. We were able to hit full ripeness on the vines, but it would have been nice to get a couple more weeks of hang time, get a little more concentration of fruit. But 2020 vintage on a whole was great. The Cab Franc is tasting phenomenal. As you mentioned, cranberry, raspberry, great acidity, good structure. I'm suspecting another 90 plus wine from the LA wine competition again.
I would think so. Yeah. The other thing that, 2020, we had the fires. And so a lot of the vineyards had to pick a little bit earlier than they would have preferred to because of the smoke that was there. And it's funny but not funny when I try to explain to people that there was smoke and people didn't harvest or they harvested earlier or whatever. They're like, oh, so there's smoke in here, and I'm like, no, this wine does not have smoke in it. Just because it was in the 2020 vintage does not mean that there's smoke in here. And to me, smoke taint is obvious. Is obvious. So anybody who's worried about 2020 vintage in Paso because of smoke, this is not it. This is beautiful. This has absolutely no smoke in it.
Absolutely not. We were fortunate enough to not have any fires near our vineyard. And the way that Brecon is, for anyone that hasn't been to Brecon yet, Brecon's right along Vineyard Drive, north of Highway 46 on the west side of 101. That's when we're talking about west side of Paso, west side of 101. And it's more or less closer to Adelaida Road. So you're in Adelaida District. And the way the wind comes through, all the smoke that was from the fires below us completely bypassed the winery. There wasn't a day that I was at the winery in 2020. I was there a couple of times where I was kind of going through do some wine tasting myself.
I was like, you're drinking. Don't lie.
Yeah.
You're drinking.
I was getting to know Brecon's wine really well.
Sure.
But there was no smoke that actually came in the vineyard, and so there is no smoke taint in any of our wines. We were super lucky to not have that. I know they're to the south of Paso and over the hill into down Edna Valley and even south. There's a lot of worry about that, but for us, it wasn't there. And you're absolutely right. If you taste wines and that have been subject to smoke, it's very evident right off the get-go. You campfire, and none of our wines have that. So
yeah. This wine, like I said, it's got a beautiful acidity, which is, I think, a character of quality Cab Franc. That acidity allows it to age more than people think Cab Franc can age. Like I said, it's got the red fruit, the cranberry, the raspberry, that black tea, and the finish is really, really long.
absolutely. So to go back to your comment about ageability real fast. So let's take a few steps back. Brecon was purchased 10 years ago, I guess between Damien and his wife Amanda and their business partner Simon and his wife Anna. When we were able to celebrate our 10-year anniversary, Simon was actually out visiting, and we had a full library sample from 2012 all the way up to our current release of 2019, and we snuck in the 2020. It was awesome to see how the wines made in 2012 and from 2012 all the way to 2019 and 2020 have aged over time. And to your point, Cab Franc, and specifically our site of Cab Franc, ages incredibly well. 2012 was tasting phenomenal. So had nice acidity, had a slight age character to it, which, it's 10 years old, it should. But it still had plenty of fruit, and it was delightful. One cool thing that Damien has been able to do is make Cab Franc from our vineyard, from the day they purchased it forward to now. I think it's super cool to be able to have that library sample and taste it.
Yeah, and just the history of those vines, like you said, I do believe they are the oldest Cab Franc vines that we have in Paso. So that the history of those vines is so incredible. And I can understand why, Brecon loves Cab Franc, but why do you think Brecon loves Cab Franc so much? I mean, other than winning consistent awards vintage after vintage, that's just like second grace to Brecon.
Yeah.
But why do you think they love it so much?
Yeah. Sometimes I wish that we could go back and actually the vines could talk and they could share their story from 1970 on, because it would be super interesting to see how Paso has changed, how the vineyards changed over time. It's kind of like when, going back in time and seeing everything, but vines obviously can't talk, so that's kind of a bummer. Cab Franc is definitely a favorite of Brecon, I think, first and foremost, because it has been a staple of the vineyard site. So when, again, when the property was purchased, there was some of the oldest plantings of Cab Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon, and really that I think lends to the history of where Brecon is in Paso, and even Paso wine in the 70s coming to now is kind of entrenched in that area. In addition to that, the wines that we make from there are phenomenal. I mean, great fruit, great structure. I say world-class wines. I truly believe they are. In addition to that, Cab Franc is fun. It's a serious wine, but it drinks a lot easier than Cabernet Sauvignon. So there's that component to it. It's fruit forward. It has softer tannin, and it's not aggressive and has to be laid down for many years. So it's a fun wine. It's definitely a serious wine, and it definitely is a food pairing wine. So all those things are they come together, I think, when we at Brecon talk about what we believe is wine and how it fits into daily life. And additionally to that, I kind of feel like, and when you talk to some of the team, we feel like at times Cab Franc is an underdog because it's always talked about as a blender. And we think it's so much more than just a blender. It's, again, great fruit, good structure. When the site is right and the terroir can be shown through the winemaking practices and the bottling of the wine, we truly believe it can be a standalone wine that runs with the rest of the world. It's not just Loire. It's definitely Paso and specifically Adelaide District, our site. So I think those really boiled down are the main reasons why we love Cab Franc. And it's just kind of fun to have something on their menu that, not everyone might know what Cab Franc is. We pour it often to new wine drinkers, and they're surprised to hear that Cab Franc is actually the grape. So it's good all around. It's kind of fun to educate and showcase what we believe is phenomenal wine.
And the Vintner Project beat me to the question. So they want to know, what is your favorite dish pairing with a Brecon Cab Franc?
Okay. So, Central Coast has a lot of tri-tip, and they're known for, if you go south of Paso, Santa Maria tri-tip. But if you think about a slow roasted tri-tip instead of on the barbecue, maybe roast it in the oven, real simple. I think it's fantastic with that. Other than roasted tri-tip, I mean, I'm Italian in blood, so you can't go wrong with Cab Franc and a pasta sauce, a red sauce. So those
Absolutely.
would be my two go-tos.
A huge positive of Cab Franc is that it can go with that red sauce. It can be. And Amanda is chiming in braised lamb. So
ooh, that is true.
Absolutely. Absolutely braised lamb. I'm a vegetarian, so I don't eat that, but absolutely can see that pairing. Such a good
Okay. So if you think about vegetarian dishes as well, I think tomato-based vegetarian dishes would be great with it. But even like a hearty grilled mushroom dish.
Okay. Yes, absolutely. So you want to know what I love with Cab Franc, which is kind of a weird pairing, but I love it. I love ratatouille with Cab Franc.
There you go. Yeah. Cheers, ratatouille.
Woo! I think it is a fantastic pairing. And I'm not gonna lie, I tasted ratatouille for the first time because I love the movie, so I wanted to try it, and I love it. And now I make it, and we always pair Cab Franc with the ratatouille because the mixture of the vegetables goes really well with Cab Franc, and then the tomato paste, the little bit of tomato paste that's in there brings it out, and I think it's a fantastic pairing. So there you go, Vintner Project. You've got 4 ideas to go with it. And Phyllis Redbeard is saying hi, Tony. So,
Hey, Phyllis.
So take us into Brecon's mind of wine producing and take us from the vineyard to the bottle. So what are you looking for when you're maintaining those vines? How are you tending to those vines? And then what are some of the chemical aspect and profile that you're looking for when you harvest? And then how are you aging it and
Yeah.
fermenting it?
Well,
Fermenting and aging.
we can't give away all the secrets, so I'll tell you what I can tell you.
Okay.
So starting the vineyard, as mentioned, the soil we have is awesome. It has veins of limestone and calcareous rock, which really lend to, I think, the nice acidity of the wine. But those also help us when we're growing and kind of retain some water when we're have wet years, and so that's a great thing. The vineyards themselves, we have two. This is going to get kind of nerdy for a second, but we have two different trellis types that we operate under. The old vines are set up as this modified cane pruned trellis system, which is really nice because it has plenty of air for sunlight to hit the grapes, and sunlight on the grapes during the ripening process helps fully ripen the skins and the seeds. On the new planting, we actually have the spur prune trellis system, which also really pushes the vines out and again creates a nice airy environment for the vineyard to ripen. When we're going through and assessing the grapes through the growing season, we're tasting on a regular basis, and we're analyzing for the basic things of sugar accumulation and acidity. But really, the key that Damien and I focus on is the flavor profile. We know historically how often or when we've picked the grapes, we can get a feel for a window of time that we think the grapes are going to be ready. But really, it boils down to the flavor of the skins. Are the skins too bitter? Are they just right on the terms of green tannin versus brown tannin? Are you getting a concentration of flavor? So is it an intense cherry, or is it kind of a for lack of a better term, a watery cherry note? And if it's more watery, we leave it out for a while, and the grape naturally regulates itself, and the vine regulates itself, and they fully ripen. So those are the cues that we go through on more or less a weekly and even multiple times per week as we're getting close to harvesting. Once we harvest the grapes, we take them into the winery. We destem them. We take the berries off of the stems. We ferment in large fermentation vats, which is really nice because you can control how many times you're doing punch downs, the temperature, and all that. And we trial a couple of different things. Like we'll trial a cold soak for a day or so, and that's before fermentation actually happens. We'll cool the must down. And again, real nerdy stuff here. There's an aqueous stage of extraction where without alcohol, the color comes out of the skins. And with a longer cool soak, you can get different flavor extractions from the skins. And then you start fermentation. And then all the alcohol starts coming into play, and they extract different flavors. So you're tasting on a daily basis. And those tastings are, I think, the most fun because that stirs up the conversation between Damien and I on when we're going to press out, or do we need to cool the fermentation down to let the marination of flavors happen on a slower pace to get a more refined wine. And it's super fun because, Damien's got this long experience of winemaking across the globe, and so he's experienced things that I haven't. And so it's cool to pick his brain and see where he's at. And even once in a while, I can throw in, a little bit of my experience too from different areas and offer an idea. And so that I think is super cool, Damien. What we've been experimenting with a lot is post-ferment skin maceration. So once alcoholic fermentation is done, we'll let the skins kind of, again, for lack of a better term, marinate in the wine. And with time, we feel like that gives refinement to some of the tannin structure, but also it allows an extended period of time for flavors to come out of the grapes. And then we'll press out the wine, remove the wine from the skins, and barrel age. Our barrel program for Bordeaux is pretty standard. When we identify our reserve level versus our meritage or our standard wine, I guess you could call it. We will put the reserve wines in a little higher percentage of new oak. About 40% is more or less where we're at. It will age for 20 months. And then at that time, we'll be tasting as it gets closer to 20 months. We don't want to taste too early because every time you open up the barrel, a little bit of oxygen gets in, and oxygen is not necessarily the best thing for wine as it ages. So we'll taste, I don't know, on a quarterly basis, the wines to see how they're progressing. And as you're tasting in those instances, again, the conversation between Damien, our cellar master, which is also named Tony, and so he's T1, I'm T2, and I kind of go through and
now I get it.
Yeah.
You wrote T2, and I was like, okay, I don't know what that means.
There you go, T2. So the conversation stirs up those tastings, and you can kind of get a preliminary idea of how the wine is aging, how other components might be able to blend in. And like I said, in the 2020's case, we blended a little bit of Cabernet Sauvignon. And those conversations get kind of stirred up and going. So then when it comes time at 20 months, when the wine comes out of barrel, we have more or less a loose game plan of how we're going to put the blend together. And then, as simple as it sounds, we'll put the blend together, we'll finalize the blend, put it together, and in bottle it goes. We like to get about 8 months to a year of bottle age before we release wines. We feel that bottle aging only helps the wine before releasing, and we think it puts the best foot forward for the wine to get a little bit of bottle age and before we pour it for customers. And in this case, our Cab Franc. It had this was bottled earlier this year, around August, I believe. So it won't be released until early 2023. I don't know the release date quite yet, but still sticking to that 8 months of a minimum of bottle age before releasing. So that's more or less.
Your current Cab Franc release is 19?
We are actually sold out of our 19 Cab Franc. So right now, we don't have a Cab Franc on our tasting menu, which is so this 2020 is a sneak peek of what we're releasing. And for anyone that is watching this, I might be jumping ahead here, but I'm going to go anyways. If you would like to try the 2020 Cab Franc, we'll be pouring it at the Cab Franc pouring tasting at Cass Winery.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that. So anybody who is watching, there is still time to purchase tickets. Before Tony got on, I talked about the virtual event that's going on tonight. Those tickets are free, and you can purchase them on Eventbrite. But what Tony's talking about is an actual Cab Franc Day celebration in Paso, which I am so excited and honored, and I don't even know the words to say that this is going on in my beautiful Paso. But there is an event on Sunday. There's going to be a masterclass. There's seminars on Cab Franc, and then there's a grand tasting. And Brecon is one of the wineries that will be participating in that. And so you can also get those tickets through Eventbrite. But if you go to my profile here and hit that Linktree link, there is a link in my profile that will send you to how to purchase those tickets for Sunday, and they are still available. So if you're a Cab Franc fan and you're anywhere near the Central Coast, you're going to want to participate on a Sunday, because 14, I think we're up to 14 wineries are going to be pouring Cab Franc.
That's awesome.
So it's a lot of Cab Franc in the house. So if somebody comes to Brecon, and when you're not sold out and you're pouring the Cab Franc, how do you explain what Cab Franc is to somebody? Ray May, if Brecon is there, I am too. Go to the site, buy the tickets now. So if somebody is a newbie to Cab Franc and they're coming to Brecon and you actually have the Cab Franc to pour, how do you describe, you say, are you familiar with Cab Franc? And they're like, no. Is that Cab Sauv? No. What do you say?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're new, I think the best place to start is Brecon. But what we usually would say is, Cab Franc is not Cabernet Sauvignon. Cab Franc is the actual name of the variety. So it's a parent to Cabernet Sauvignon. So you might get some of the same aromas of Cab Franc, like, red or dark red fruits. But in terms of Cab Franc versus Cabernet Sauvignon, I think the way we describe it is it's very very different in terms of structure. Because Cabernet is always a big beastie wine that needs to be aged for at least 2 years, maybe more, before you can really enjoy it. And Cabernet Franc doesn't always have to be aged like that. It's soft. It's more plush tannins. It's easier to drink young, and it's definitely an easier food wine pairing because of all those. And typically, I find that Cab Francs, especially ours, have a really nice acidity to it that makes it easier for those food pairing ideas. So I think is really what boils down when we explain it to people.
Absolutely. And Cab is dad and Sauvignon is mom. Yeah, Cab Franc is paired up, as I always say, one wild, windy, crazy evening in the vineyard, Cab Franc and Sauvignon Blanc found each other. It was a love match made in the vineyard in heaven, and out came Cab Sauv, and they never looked back.
They never looked back.
But Cab Franc kind of got around, right?
It sure did.
I know that most people say she, but I just always say he. Cab Franc is also one of the parents of Carmenere, and it's also one of the parents of Merlot. So it got around there in that vineyard.
Absolutely. I mean,
a lot of Bordeaux. We wouldn't have Bordeaux if it wasn't for Cab Franc.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that also kind of lends to why, it often is planted with Cabernet and blended with Cabernets. They all marry together very well.
Right. They do. We just think that Cab Franc should be the spotlight instead of the underdog.
Absolutely. Hence, reserve Cab Franc.
There you go. So why do you think Cab Franc is an underdog? What do you think we have to do to get it more of a spotlight and to get it to be more, not an underdog anymore, where people actually understand Cab Franc and a larger portion of people understand Cab Franc?
My opinion is continue on with the path that you guys and us are continuing to do, is educate, keep it as a single varietal, explain why specific vineyard expressions of Cab Franc are, what they are and what makes it unique. I mean, knowledge is power, right? So if you are interested in wine, or even remotely interested in understanding why wines taste differently, the best thing we can do is educate, not be pretentious about it, because I mean, wine can be, you can have a very serious wine and not be pretentious about wine, and talk about it unpretentiously. And I think that's those things are what really we can do to continue on keeping Cab Franc in the forefront, is explain what it is, why is it unique, and what makes the site where it comes from unique. Because at the end of the day, that's kind of what Brecon is doing. To turn it back on us, our whole idea is to really explore. So Damien is a big caver, Amanda's an outdoorsy person, and they've had plenty of world travels together. And one thing they've always said is when Brecon was started, they're exploring the west side, continuing their exploration through the world, but in this case, in wine on the west coast, specifically west side of Paso Robles. They're always in search of vineyards that have limestone soils, and specifically a hilltop where fruit is grown. And those two things are really our mandatory check boxes, if you will, on bringing in a new vineyard is it really needs to be on limestone soils. We really think that limestone soils express so much in a wine. And then the hilltop portion is vines that struggle oftentimes produce very intense, small berried fruit, and that lends to a what we perceive as a higher quality wine, and definitely a bigger, fruitier wine. So hilltops vineyards often have a lot of struggle that is associated with them, and if you have both limestone and hilltop, we think that that's ideal. And so those kinds of conversations, explain why we go through and seek these out, why Cab Franc does so well on our site, the limestone soils. It actually is on a hilltop on our site. Those are the things that are going to keep on bringing people back to Cab Franc and show what we think is one of the best Bordeaux around.
All right. And now that we've teased everybody with the 2020 that's not out yet, and if somebody can't come and taste it at the Paso Cab Franc Day on Sunday, how can they get their hands on Brecon wines in general? How can they come visit you? Tell us about that tasting experience.
Yeah, so our tasting room is open every day of the week. We're open 11 to 5. The best way to come visit us is to make a reservation on our website, breconestate.com. You can order wine on our website, have it shipped to you, and those are probably the two easiest ways to get to know us. Our tasting experience is awesome. We have a group of tasting room employees that really know wine, have a passion for wine, and know our site specifically. So I would suggest if anyone has not been to Brecon, come out, check out our winery, check out the tasting room. It's a great outdoor space, fantastic wines, fantastic architecture like we were talking about earlier. And the best way to do that is a reservation on our website, Brecon Estate. You can also follow our Instagram, which obviously we have here, Brecon Estate.
Yep, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on and for sharing the Cab Franc. That is, I'm so honored. I've got Cab Franc that's not released yet. And again, it's keeping with my, my high standards of Brecon. They just keep, when I think they can't go any higher, they go higher. And yes, Wag Fam Bam 33115, they are dog friendly. They are definitely dog friendly.
We are. We got some cool winery dogs too. Roy, hashtag shout out for Roy.
Oh,
We have a cool Australian there. Yeah. Did you meet him when you came out?
Roy.
You did?
Yeah.
Nice.
I'll share it with you later. Yeah. One of the first trips, and then not to be depressed, but the other dog.
Yeah, Louis.
What?
Louis, I think was his name.
Louis? Yeah, right. Because Louis was the one that loved the ball. Like I just stood there, and threw the ball, and he would go get it and come back, go get it and come back, and I would like take one sip of wine and go to my husband, "This is really good, but I'm gonna play with the dog." And
Yeah. Well, Roy has taken over the love Louis had for the ball, and he also is a pretty passionate ball chaser.
Okay. Well, you know what? When you've got exceptional wines, beautiful architecture, amazing history, and dog friendly, you've got it all, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and for sharing your Cab Franc love with me and with the followers who were coming on. And thank you to everybody who joined and watched in. And I will raise my glass and I will say I'm going to say it was hard to keep a little bit in it for the final cheer, but I will raise my glass and say slancha.
Yes, cheers. Thanks for having us on. It was great.
And
see you, I guess, on Sunday. Yeah, see you Sunday.
Bye.
Bye.